Who is FCC? Well, our About Us is really about you, the goals you want to reach, and the dreams you have. You're invested in your business, and as the only lender 100% invested in Canadian agriculture and food, so are we. Because a dream is just the start. It also needs a lender who understands where your dreams come from, where they can go, and what it takes to get there. If you want to start, grow, or transform your agriculture or food business, we can help. Because we're not just your lender. We're your champion, your catalyst, and we're behind you every step of the way. We are FCC. Dream. Grow. Thrive.
Hello, my name is JP Gervais, and I am the Chief Economist at Farm Credit Canada. Welcome to this video featuring the FCC 2023 Farmland Value Report. Before I get started, I would like to acknowledge the lands on which I'm currently situated are part of the treaty and traditional territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, the Huron-Wendat, and the Wyandot Nations. This land acknowledgement is a way for me to affirm my commitment to learning about the history of Indigenous peoples and actively working towards reconciliation. In this video, I will review at a high level the results of the 2023 Farmland Value Report. I will discuss the main drivers behind the results and provide observations about the trend to monitor in 2024. So let's get started. The average annual rate of increase of land values in Canada was 11.5% in 2023. In just a second, I will put a map up on the screen that shows the breakdown of all the different rate of increases or average rate of increases in all the provinces. I encourage you to go to our website at fcc.ca/farmlandvalues, where you'll find an interactive map that will allow you to dive into each of the province. So you'll find results for regions within a province that will get you a rate of increase or an average rate of increase for each region, as well as an average price on a per acre basis, and a range of land values that represent 90% of the transactions that we have in our data set. So there's tons of information for you to look at. Now, the national average of 11.5% is actually a weighted average. The weights are based on the share of acres in each of the provinces. So the province of Saskatchewan, because it represents about 40% of all acres or farmland acres in the country, has a much bigger weight than other provinces. In fact, if you look at the map, you'll notice that only two provinces, Saskatchewan and Quebec, have an average rate of increase higher than the national average of 11.5%. Now, I want to say a few words about the methodology behind the Farmland Value Report. We have a system of benchmark properties that we appraise every year to get a sense of the average trend of each province and each of the region as well. So that approach, that's a benchmark approach, allows us to be consistent every year in terms of what we're reporting. And we complement this benchmark approach with a full statistical analysis that leverages the entire data set we have on farmland transactions for 2023. So overall, this is a very robust approach to assess the trend in land values. When we look at land values, we also don't want to lose sight of the perspective of time, right? So we want to go back and actually look at what has been the trend in recent years. So you'll see up on the screen the pattern of the last 10 years when it comes to average increases in land values at the national level. So you'll notice that in 2023, the average rate of increase was slightly below last year in 2022. And it was a little bit of a break in terms of the trends that we've seen, because we had 3 consecutive years prior to this year of an acceleration in the rate of increase in land values. But looking at 11.5% average increase for 2023 and comparing it to 2022, this is not much of a slowdown. And that can be a little bit misleading when you look at the national picture. So what I'm going to do next is to bring up a little bit of the same analysis. So looking at time and the evolution of the trend in land values, but breaking it down by province. So you'll see up on the screen a table that basically tells you what has been if you see the first column of numbers, that's the most recent average increase that we're reporting for 2023. Then you move to the right and you go back 6 months and you have a 12-month rate of increase that starts from July 2022 to June 2023. And on the far right, you'll have the annual rate of increase for the entire 2022. So if you start off on the far right, you'll look that for a number of provinces, we do have a little bit of a slowdown in the farmland value, right? If you look at BC and Alberta, you got a rate of increase on average for BC of 8%. And already at mid-year last year, we were noticing that there was going to be a slowdown in the farmland market. Fewer transactions and land values that were not going up at the same pace as the year before in 2022. Mid-year point, we had 1.8% increase over the last 12 months. Same kind of observation as well for Alberta, going from 10% to 6%, resulting in a 6.5% increase for 2023. In the case of BC, we report an average decline in land values of 3.1%, and that's mostly driven by one region in British Columbia that accounts for really high values. So this is the region in the country that has the highest average land price, as well as the largest range of land values. So this potential variability is to be expected given the region is characterized by high land prices, as well as a wide range of land values that exist in the region. If you go to the Atlantic region, for example, and you look at 3 of the 4 provinces, I should have said basically that, that we don't have enough data to report for Newfoundland and Labrador, as well as for the Yukon and Northwest Territories. But for the 3 provinces where we have enough data, so that's New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, and PEI, we have a rate of increase that's lower than the double-digit increase that we had for 2022. So again, there's a definite slowdown in the farmland market. Not that we're seeing farmland values decline, but we have fewer transactions and land values that are going up at a little bit of a slower pace. Now in Ontario, we do also have a slowdown. If you compare from the far right, 19% increase in 2022, all the way up to 10.7% increase for 2023. Now, this is quite a bit of a slowdown in terms of going from roughly 20% to 10%, but the bottom line is that we still have double-digit growth in average land values in Ontario. And this needs to be put in context as well, because not only 2022 recorded about 20% increase in land values, but that was the case as well in 2021 when we reported around 20% increase in average land values for Ontario. So it's still a very strong market, but things seem to be slowing down overall as well. In fact, if you look at provinces where there's not been much of a slowdown recorded, we have Saskatchewan, 15.7% relative to 14% in 2022. Manitoba is roughly the same pace of increase, and Quebec is a little bit higher than what it was a year ago. And for these provinces, despite some of the decline in the economic environment with regards to commodity prices and interest rates that are still high, we did have quite an increase, somewhat of an increase in receipts of grains and oilseeds and pulses, let's say, for example, in Saskatchewan and Manitoba, whereas for Alberta, there's been a little bit of a decline in 2023. So it matches up, the trends that we're seeing in 2023 match up with a little bit of the economic environment that we did notice. Despite this, I would have expected that given the economic environment of slower increases overall in farm income, as well as an environment where interest rates remain elevated, I would have expected that the increase in farmland values would have slowed down a little bit more than what were reported in our analysis. Now, I just talked about the economic environment, so let's dive in a little bit into what are the trends when it comes to the economic environment. Well, we know that interest rates remain elevated much of throughout 2023. Actually, the increase in interest rates started out in 2022. For the most part, we saw interest rates being elevated. We saw a number of operations that had to renew loans at a much higher interest rate than they had previously. So all of that increases the cost of buying land and perhaps slowing down a little bit demand. We do expect that, thinking about 2024, we do expect that there's going to be a little bit of relief brought by the Bank of Canada in terms of interest rates. We believe that as soon as July, we're likely to get a rate cut of 25 basis points by the Bank of Canada. Financial markets actually believe that this could start in June, but no matter what, we think that by mid-year, we're probably going to get a little bit of relief when it comes to interest rates. And we are expecting that we're going to get 2 other or additional interest rate cuts by the end of the year. To actually bring the Bank of Canada rate to 4.25%. So a little bit of relief when it comes to financing costs, but I do expect interest rates to remain higher than what they were during the pandemic and even higher than what they were prior to the pandemic. So when it comes to the demand of farmland, we have interest rates that matter, and we also have the trends in farm income. And when you think of the trends in farm income, you can think of, especially when it comes to crop receipts, you can think of commodity prices as well as yields. Now, we did have a few challenges when it comes to production, and certainly in the prairies where we had a dry year in 2023 and we had production a little bit underneath what we would have expected under normal conditions. But what about commodity prices? So if I start off with corn and wheat, corn on the left-hand side of the screen, wheat on the right-hand side, you'll notice that in 2024 and as well as part of 2023 already we were seeing the price of corn coming down, certainly starting in the second half of 2023. Right now, if you look at the current trend for 2024, we have prices that are not too far off what they were in 2020. In fact, the projection is that by the end of this marketing year, the marketing year 2023-2024, we're going to have a stock-to-use ratio, which summarizes the balance between supply and demand, that will be as high or even a little bit higher than what we had in 2019-2020. And in that case, for the marketing year 2019-2020, the relevant corn price to look at is that first 6 months of 2020. So in some sense, to expect that the stock-to-use ratio at the end of this marketing year is going to be as high or even a little bit higher than what we had 2019-2020, that shouldn't come as a surprise then to see the downward pressures that we've seen lately on the price of corn. So we expect commodity prices for the rest of 2024 to trend below what they were in recent years. Now, much can be said, much of the same can be said for the wheat market. I'm a little surprised that financial markets are kind of dismissing a little bit the uncertainty when it comes to the supply of wheat in the marketplace, especially if you think of the war in Ukraine, for example. But the bottom line is that we expect prices to be significantly lower than what the 5-year average has been. So unless, a supply shock comes in, and it's really hard to anticipate where that will be coming from, we do think that commodity prices will remain depressed for most of 2024. Now, if you look at oilseeds, I think it's much of the same story. We got inventories of oilseeds, certainly if you think of canola, for example, in Europe, that are climbing, that are really high. We have a little bit of a weaker demand for vegetable oil. I think there's quite a bit of upside when you think of the demand for vegetable oil going forward because of the development of biodiesel and renewable diesel. But the bottom line is that we were maybe a little bit too aggressive in terms of expectations of what that demand could look like. As a result, we have prices that are lower than what they've been recently. But yet, if you look at soybeans, we still have a price for the marketing year 23-24 that is higher than what it was in 2019-2020. Expectations are, unlike what I just stated and reported for corn, expectations are that we're going to get to at the end of this marketing year, a stock-to-use ratio that will be a little bit lower than what we had in 2019-2020, which results in some of the pricing trends that you see up on the screen. So overall, we do expect that commodity prices will be lower. If we can rebound in terms of production, certainly comparing, thinking about the prairie provinces where we had some challenges in 2023 as well as in 2021, we think maybe that we are going to see a decline overall in crop receipts. So what you're seeing up on the screen, I see that I'm presenting the breakdown of receipts for crops, livestock, and program payments. Not necessarily a surprise to see a little bit of increase over time with regards to program payments, which include crop insurance, given some of the production challenges that I was referring to just moments ago. But the bottom line is that if you look at all crops, so that's not just grains, oilseeds, and pulses, but it brings up as well all different types of crops, we're projecting a decline in 2024 for the calendar year of 10% in overall receipts. So with income coming down, with interest rates being higher, that should actually mean that we expect the demand for farmland to be a little bit weaker in 2024 compared to what it was in 2023. And part of the reason where in 2023 we still see some pretty strong increases in land values is, I suspect, because of tight supply in the marketplace. So it's not just that we're not making more farmland over time, but it's just that the available supply of land, or the supply of land, I should say, available for sale is quite limited, and that tends to push prices a little bit higher. Now, thinking as well of the trend for 2024, we have to understand where are we at in terms of affordability of farmland. And so affordability for me is not just the price of farmland on a dollar per acre basis, but it's also to put everything in perspective. What is the price of land relative to what you can gross off that land? And also, what are the financing costs attached to buying land? So if you put all of this together, what we come up with is a ratio like you see up on the screen right now. That ratio is the share of payments of capital and interest relative to what you can gross off the land. So there are tons of assumptions behind this. Average prices, average yields, or average actual yields, assumptions with regards to interest rates based on what the trends have been on average in each of the year, the assumption that, average amortization and so forth. But just to illustrate, keeping the same assumptions over time, we just want to illustrate what really is what that affordability looks like. And what we see is that, in central Canada, if you look at Ontario and Quebec, that share of income allocated to servicing debt, so payments of capital and interest, is at an all-time high. So land is the least affordable it's ever been. And in Ontario in particular, that ratio exceeds 100%, which means that, if you look at what you can gross, not necessarily what net income, so not even accounting for expenses of farm inputs, but only just looking at what you can gross off the land relative to the payment associated with buying land, that requires more than 100% of what you can generate off that land. So we are at a record high in Ontario and Quebec. You see a little bit of a different ratio for those two provinces based off what the average price of land is in these provinces and the differences in yields and so forth. But the bottom line is, in these two provinces, land has never been as less affordable as it was at the end of 2023. So that, kind of suggests that we need to be thinking about the market perhaps slowing down. And I'm not talking here about a decline in land values, but I'm just talking a little bit about a decline in the demand that should bring down the rate of increases that we saw in these two provinces for 2024. Now, if I bring up the same kind of ratio for the Prairie provinces, you have Alberta, Manitoba, and Saskatchewan. Not all of these provinces are actually recording an all-time high in terms of land being the least affordable it's ever been. It's certainly the case in Saskatchewan, but Saskatchewan, on the flip side of this, despite the fact that we're at the least affordable level ever when it comes to buying land in Saskatchewan, it's still a province compared to the other two Prairie provinces where that ratio is lower. Price of land, on average, is a little bit lower, and that explains some of the trends that you're seeing across those three provinces. In terms of Manitoba and Alberta, we're not at an all-time high or an all-time least affordable level, but that ratio is trending up and is close to the high that the least affordable point that we ever recorded. So again, that sends a signal that perhaps we should expect land values to, the rate of increase in land values to slow down over time. And so I think there's been, the message here is that for farm operations to be cautious, to make sure that any type of decision fits the strategic plan of the business. So I encourage you to go to our website at fcc.ca/farmland values to get more insights on the farmland market and be able to dive into some of the results in greater detail. And you'll find as well tons of information relevant for your planning in 2024. Thanks for watching.